What's up, you guys? Nick here, and last week we actually went through one of my training logs when I was leaving high school right before I entered college, and we talked about what an entire summer's worth of training looked like for me. Well before I was a two-time Olympian, before I'd ever won my first NCAA title, what my training was like. If you didn't see that, I'll link it right here. But I think the important thing to talk about here today is that in going through this old chicken scratch writing of mine back in the summer of 2002, in the back of that training log, I actually wrote down my goals. Now, of course, for those of you following my career, you know that I have been obsessed with goal setting for a long time. In fact, I was obsessed with goal setting way back at the age of 18, and I actually wrote here my long-term, medium, short, daily goals. And we're gonna go through those right now and find out if young 18-year-old Nick actually hit his goals. Now, one important thing to note, I did define what my short-term, long-term goals were. You know, I do this today. If I was to talk about my long-term goals, I'm actually thinking, oh, long-term, where do I want to be in 10 years? Well, at the age of 18, an 18-year-old can't really think that far in the future. So my daily goals were daily. My short-term goals were defined as 1 to 4 weeks into the future. My medium goals defined as 4 to 12 weeks into the future. And a long-term goal for 18-year-old Nick was just 6 to 12 months away. But that was how long I was setting my goals back then. So let's look at what those were. Now, leaving high school, I had run everything from cross country to, in track and field, I ran on the 4x4, but also as long as the 2 mile. And so going into college, I knew that in cross country, I was going to be going up from the 5K to the 8K in distance. And on the track, I was probably going to be focusing more on 800, 1500, and 5K. I wasn't going to be running just sprints. I wasn't going to be running just cross country. I was really trying to be a really versatile athlete so I could score points for my team everywhere from 8K cross country all the way down to 800 meters on the track. So goals here, we'll start long-term and work our way backwards, and you'll see why here in a minute. Long-term goals, 6 to 12 months. Earn a scoring position at Willamette Cross Country. I was able to do that. I was actually, most races are number 5 guy my freshman year, sometimes as high as 3, sometimes as low as 7. But I think at Nationals that year, I ended up being our 5th guy, so I was a scoring position. Placed top 100 at NCAAs. Again, I did it. I was 85 at the NCAA championships my freshman year. I was really proud of that. Being that I was really more a mid-distance runner, to go out as a freshman and take top 100, I was very pleased to have done that. Be on a top 3 team. I think we just missed this one. I believe we were 4th my freshman year. I'll have to go back and check, but I think we just missed out on that one. Get to 150 at 800 meters. Now, this is the one I'm most excited to brag about a little bit. When I left high school, I was only a 153 runner. So at state my senior year, I ran 153.3 to win the state title. So to imagine myself 1 year from that day, shaving 3 seconds off and breaking 150, that's a really ambitious goal for young Nick Symmonds. I managed to do it. 1 year, almost to the day after winning that state title, I won my second NCAA title at 800 meters. I actually ran 149.8. I believe it was 149.8 or 149.5 to win the NCAA title, a huge personal best for me, and my first NCAA title in the 800. So that's a big one right there. Make it to the finals at NCAA's in 800. Well, kind of answer that question. I not only made it to the finals, I won the title. And break 355 for 1500 meters. I did that too. I said that the 800 was my second NCAA title because just an hour or two before that, I won the 1500 with a time of 3:45. So, as ambitious as these goals were for me, by putting my head down, by believing in myself, by training so hard, I went from being, essentially a 420 miler to a 403 miler. I went from being a 153 800 meter runner to a 149 800 meter runner. I mean, what an incredible jump. But I always say this to young athletes when they're going off to college. Don't limit yourself. Don't question what you're capable of. The transition from high school to college can be monumental. And for me, certainly, I went from being kind of a slappy to a really high-performing athlete as a very serious freshman cross-country runner and track runner. Now let's look at those medium goals, because this was a guy, you can probably tell I'm an easily distracted person, but I knew that I needed to finish the summer strong, and that was my first goal in my medium goal list here. Finish strong this summer. I would say I did okay. We'll talk about that in a minute, but again, easily distracted, especially in the summers when all my friends are out playing. We'll talk about that in a second. Break 29 for the first 8K. I believe I did that. I recall I was like 27 high, 28 low. Break 27 at some race. I definitely did that. I was able to run in the 26s. I think I even broke 26 my freshman year. And these are 8K times, so take that with a grain of salt. We'll talk about how things fell apart a little bit here in the short-term goals. My 1 to 4 week short-term goal, stay above 16 miles per week for the rest of the summer. We just talked about finishing the summer strong. I failed to do that. I said in last week's video that during that summer, I was trying to hold 60-mile weeks. And actually in August, late July, early August, I hit about 20 miles a week. But I went and took a little break. My family has a cabin in Montana, and I went there and just went fishing for a couple weeks. I know I was hiking and ran a little bit, but for me, I wanted to have that really great mental break. Not physically that I needed, just a mental break saying, as soon as I come back from this vacation, for basically the next 3 or 4 months as I prepare for NCAA cross country, it's gonna be the hardest training of my life. I gave myself that, and I think that was a good idea. And ultimately it certainly paid off in the performances that I was able to put up at NCAA Cross and then again in the spring in the track. I think that was the right call. Increased flexibility. I failed that one miserably. I failed that at every point in my entire career. I still can't touch my toes. I have to believe I'm one of the least flexible people in the world. Didn't matter for me. I think flexibility is important and has been shown, studies have shown that it can help reduce injuries. But being flexible as a runner, it's just not that important. For all of those who disagree with me, let me know in the comments below. Show me a study why it's important. Maintain weight. I love this. Maintain weight between 145 pounds and 150 pounds. This just goes to show how incredibly different athletes and even the same person can operate over the course of their life. Now, that summer I was trying to stay lean and prepare for 8K cross country, 145 to 150. But today I weigh 185 pounds. This is what, 15 years later, 20 years later, I weigh significantly more. But as a pro athlete, at the very, very peak of my middle distance career, you would think I probably wanted to be as light as I was that summer. No, I raced best at 160 to 165. So, athletes, depending on the event they're training for, their weight are gonna fluctuate so much, and it may fluctuate a lot during your lifetime, and that's okay. It just gets worse from here. Daily. Oh my gosh. Take a morning pulse. I remember thinking that this was a really good thing to do because it kind of lets you know if you're getting enough rest. It can tell you if you're getting sick. There's a lot of science behind taking your resting heart rate each morning. I did not do that. I always thought it was a good idea. I don't think I ever did it in my career. Drink at least 8 glasses of H2O. I probably did that just because Idaho summers are so freaking hot and hydration has never been a problem for me. This is where it gets so embarrassing. Get at least 6 hours of sleep. You guys know that my #1 rule of training is to never set an alarm. That you should go to bed early and you should wake up on your own knowing that you've got enough sleep. For me, that has always been 8 to 10 hours worth of sleep. This little dumbass at 18 years of age wanted 6 hours of sleep. Now let me tell you why. I failed my #1 rule of training back in high school, and I wish so bad I could go back and give myself the rest that I needed. But I was up till all hours of the night on AIM, AOL Instant Messenger. Most of you have no idea what that is. Before we had texting, before we had DMing, before we had anything, we were on AOL Instant Messenger, and I would stay up till 2 in the morning every night flirting with girls, and I just want to slap that dumbass and tell him to go to bed. Get at least 6 hours of sleep. Even if I had gotten 6 hours of sleep, that is radically inadequate. I should say get at least 10 hours of sleep, and so I definitely failed that one. Stretch before bed. I definitely didn't do that. Take my daily vitamins. I probably did that. I've always believed in taking a daily multivitamin. Those were the goals. So what's the takeaway here? You'll notice that I set really ambitious long-term goals. And through the course of my career, I've always done that. I haven't been afraid to set long-term goals and really set them the bar very high. And I typically, almost always, hit those long-term goals. You'll notice as the term of the goal, as it gets shorter and shorter, my daily goals didn't hit any of them, hardly any of them. My short-term goals barely hit them. I'm really bad at hitting short-term goals, but I'm really good at hitting long-term goals. Now, when I think about why that is, it's because short-term goals for me have never been the kind of thing that gets me out of bed in the morning. Like daily stretching or daily, checking of your pulse rate or drinking water is not exciting. but breaking 150 for the first time is really, really exciting. So if you're the kind of athlete that needs to absolutely hit every goal they set, make sure you're setting goals that excite you. And make sure you're setting short-term, intermediate goals that really, really move the needle in terms of you hitting your long-term goal. I will always be the dreamer. I will always be the guy that sets the goal way out there, but I'm not deterred by missing my goals along the way. I'm inspired by the fact that I'm continued one day after another, slowly building the foundation that's ultimately going to get me where I want to go. There's no right or wrong way to set goals. The only wrong way is to not set goals and to not set goals that work for you. So I hope this gives you guys a little bit of insight in how I set my goals and how I've ultimately gone on to set goals every single year since I was 18 and ultimately achieve some of those big audacious goals like get a degree in biochemistry, make 2 Olympic teams, start my own business. There's lots of good ways to set goals. Just make sure you're doing what works best for you. I'll see you guys next time.